The second area that I want to talk about is China's leadership and their capacity to execute meaningful reform on the economy and on the financial system. So here you can see China's previous leader, Hu Jintao, and China's current leader, Xi Jinping. You can see both of them applauding politely. One of my observations from watching more Chinese leadership meetings than I care to mention, is that the ability to applaud politely for a sustained period of time is actually a key requirement to make it to the top of China's leadership. If you can't applaud politely for a sustained period of time, you're not going to make it onto the standing committee. That's a subject that I think maybe our Western China watchers should pay a bit more attention to. More seriously, through the Hu Jintao era and through the Xi Jinping era, there's been a consistent narrative about reform in China, and it's been a narrative about reform failure. Hu Jintao, we were told, is too consensus-oriented, too much of a committee man to push through difficult reforms. Xi Jinping, we're told, is too conservative to push through the needed liberalizations. And I think that narrative blinds us to some very significant progress that China's leadership have in fact been able to make. Let's think about the two most important instruments for control of the economy: the exchange rate and the interest rate. The exchange rate sets the price of Chinese goods relative to foreign goods. The interest rate sets the price of money. There's really nothing more important for driving efficiency and dynamism in the economy than getting it right on those two instruments. If we go back to 2003, when Hu Jintao was just coming into office, both the exchange rate and the interest rate were managed by the government and set at an artificially low rate. And if you swing the calendar forward to today, in 2020, well, the exchange rate is now close to fair value and moved substantially by market forces. And on the interest rate, not quite so much progress has been made, but interest rates today are substantially more market set than they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. Because we view China's leadership through a kind of red mist, I think we are unable to recognize some of the important progress they do make on reform. And that also means we don't pay sufficient attention to their ability to significantly move the dial in managing financial risks. So here I want to talk about China's deleveraging agenda. In 2016, Liu He, who's the chief economic advisor to Xi Jinping, kicked off the deleveraging campaign. It was a nationwide campaign to reduce risk in China's financial sector. And with that signal from Liu He, the People's Bank of China traveled around the country and they knocked on the door of every single commercial bank. And they said, show us your balance sheet. And if they didn't like what they saw, either on the asset side or the liability side of banks' balance sheets, if they thought that banks were taking too many risks in their lending or too many risks in terms of the sources of funding they relied on, they imposed meaningful punishment on those banks. I remember traveling around Henan in summer 2017 and speaking to a group of local banks. And for all of them, this PBOC campaign, this deleveraging campaign, had a meaningful impact. And we see that in the data. This chart shows you the growth in shadow bank lending, the riskiest part of China's financial system. Through 2016, it was growing at a rapid pace. When the deleveraging campaign kicked off, shadow lending first decelerated rapidly and then actually contracted for the best part of 2 years. We underestimate China's leaders' ability to execute on meaningful reforms, and we underestimate China's leaders' ability to meaningfully take steps to manage risks in the financial system.